International crimes should be investigated and prosecuted for many reasons, but I would like to focus on two of them. The first is for victims. The victims of these crimes that are usually mass atrocities are oftentimes people who are marginalized in society and would ordinarily have no voice in ensuring that justice is brought to perpetrators that commit these crimes. And so by countries focusing on these offenses, they're able to bring justice to the victims and therefore address some of the underlying concerns that people may have about crimes going unpunished, which takes us to the second reason, which is to ensure that we address issues of impunity. Because ultimately, the goal of criminal law and international criminal law is deterrence. You want to prevent people from committing these crimes because they know that there will be an expectation. Once you commit the crime, you do the time. And if countries invest in investigating and prosecuting, they're able to ensure that there is accountability for those perpetrators who commit such crimes. Even though Nigeria has not yet domesticated the Rome Statute, Nigeria is still a state party to the Rome Statute. And therefore, under international law, Nigeria is bound by the provisions of the Rome Statute. And that means that Nigeria should address those crimes that fall under the Rome Statute by investigating and prosecuting those who are alleged to have committed those crimes. Some systemic challenges, of course, I think will include capacity issues. We're talking about very serious crimes that usually take place over a significant period of time and will impact a large population or a large geographical area. And so in terms of the collection of evidence, the prosecution, the analysis that has to go into the investigation and the prosecution, it is technical. And sometimes there's a bit of capacity that may be lacking that countries need to address. I call this the figurative last mile. So countries already know how to prosecute, their domestic criminals, people who commit murder, rape in a domestic setting. But sometimes they may not know how to address criminality on a large scale where the perpetrators are oftentimes not on the battlefield. And so being able to piece together that evidence and being able to address the underlying concerns of victims is something that capacity building usually helps with. And this is where I would say positive complementarity comes to the fore. I think when we talk about these types of crimes, sometimes they're committed by the militaries of different countries. And you can imagine that in situations of ongoing war, countries generally can be unwilling to prosecute individuals, especially high-level military personnel, during an ongoing war. And this is an ongoing conversation that people need to be aware that the prosecution of those personnel is actually, in my opinion, something that will improve the ability to fight the war. Positive complementarity to me is a very important aspect of the Rome Statute. The Rome Statute talks about complementarity as a whole. But positive complementarity for me is the reality behind the complementarity concept. Because complementarity essentially means that you would rely on the state to address the underlying problems, to address the investigation, to ensure that there's prosecution, and only if the state is unwilling or unable to do so, that's when the ICC will come in. But because we have this last mile issue or problem, we need to also look into how to address capacity building issues, and so that we can empower states to do this and not just expect them to be able to do it. without necessarily providing some support in this area. And so positive complementarity is something that I believe the ICC should focus a lot more on, either by empowering organizations that are willing to do so or by doing so directly themselves. In this area, I would like to talk about Wayamo Foundation and some of the work that they've been doing in many countries, particularly in Nigeria, where they've been supporting both the military and the civilian prosecutors, from the Federal Ministry of Justice, on empowering them to understand better what the Rome Statute entails, how to investigate, how to prosecute these types of crimes, and being able to utilize some of the technology that we take for granted in the international system, like electronic databases, that will allow them to be able to collate evidence spanning many years and from many different sources, running into hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pages, to be able to do the analysis and come up with a coherent argument in court, targeting, of course, those who bear the greatest responsibility. This is very commendable work. Yes, so we have, at least from what I've seen, we've had interactions between the military and the civilians, and it helps. It helps for the civilians to see how the military think and to see how the military operate in certain settings. And it also helps for the military to understand that they operate in a civilian setting. And so it is the rule of law that should prevail at all times.